Hey, welcome and good evening. I now call the December 15th board meeting of the Lane Community College Board of Education to order. In order to continue conducting meetings in a manner that will help to combat the spread of COVID-19 and promote the safety and well-being of our community, this meeting is being held remotely. I'd like to remind board members and staff to keep themselves muted and use the hand raise feature when you'd like to speak. Donna, would you go ahead and take the roll call, please?
Sure. Holly Johnson.
Here.
Angela Van Kraus.
Present.
Mike Eister.
Here.
Austin Folneggy.
Here.
Steve Mattel.
Here.
Rosie Pryor.
Here.
Lisa Fragola.
Here. Great, thank you. So the board will open the meeting with an acknowledgement of homeland and acknowledge that the meeting takes place on the traditional homeland of the Kalapuya. Colin Vurick, LCCEF member and a vocational coordinator in specialized support services, is here this evening to read that acknowledgement. Colin?
Thank you, Lisa. We begin our meeting with the acknowledgement that the land we are on is the traditional homeland of the Kalapuya people. The Kalapuya were stewards of this very land for over 14,000 years before their traditional way of life was forever disrupted and destroyed. We start our meeting with humility and reverence for the original inhabitants, the Kalapuya.
Thank you very much for joining us tonight, Colin, and reading that. So I'd like to adopt the agenda. With flexibility. So without any objection, I'd like to adopt the agenda. Is there any objection? Okay, so we have adopted the agenda, which means we're going to go into a public hearing. So I'll now close the December 15th meeting of the Board of Education, and I will now call the public hearing for the consideration of redistricting for the Lane Community College Board of Education to order. So statements from the audience, according to Board Policy BP 320, states that the board will not respond directly to issues raised by the audience, but will refer those issues to the president for appropriate action. And we will also be taking action in our meeting after this public hearing, or at least discussing. However, we do appreciate attendees' participation in tonight's LCC board meeting and the willingness of stakeholders to address the board. Public comments, people are allotted 3 minutes for public comment. So Deborah, do we have anybody who wishes to provide comment during the public hearing tonight?
Chair Fragola, we had no requests to provide public comment for this public hearing tonight.
Okay, great. Thank you for confirming that. And I also do not see any attendees in the webinar room. So I will now adjourn the public hearing for consideration of LCC redistricting. And I will now call the December 15th board meeting of the Lane Community College Board of Education to order again. And our first agenda item is the president's report. Dr. Hamilton.
Oh, thank you, Chair Fragola. And welcome everybody to the December board meeting and the last board meeting of 2021. Say goodbye to 2021. Well, congratulations are in order and on many levels tonight. First, to our Vice Chair, Rosie Pryor, for her recent recognition by the Oregon Community College Association for their Howard Cherry Award for an outstanding board member. This award is given each year in honor of the late Dr. Howard Cherry, who was a founding member of the ACCT. We thank Rosie for her many years of service, especially over the past 2 years with all of our challenges. And we look forward to seeing Rosie at a recognition ceremony in the spring. Congratulations are also in order to Louis Maggiore and our sustainability team for recognition as a top performer in the associate's degree category of the 2021 Sustainable Campus Index. Also a reminder that the Northwest Commission for Colleges and Universities will be discussing our self-study and our college's accreditation status in January. Chief Strategy and Planning Officer Richard Plott and I will be at that meeting, and we'll be able to hopefully report back to you our permanent status for the next few years following the meeting. Special thanks to our health clinic for holding a community booster clinic day on December 7th. They provided over 160 community people with boosters. The health clinic will be picking up the vaccine and booster clinics for students again starting January 3rd. We launched our United Way campaign in December. This year's campaign was supported by both our unions, our management team, and we're just so thrilled at how everybody's been so enthusiastic about the campaign. So I'm hoping it's a successful year, and we'll report back how we did. We've been in the news a couple of times. Grant Matthews is becoming our little media star here. Another story on CTE for KEZI. Tina Clark in our dental hygiene program, talking about the dental profession, and our massage therapy program was highlighted by an alum, Grover Hubbard. So in closing tonight, I want to feature the arts. There's been a lot of activity going on performances because of the holiday season. Our LCC dance alum, Tim Bruno, he performed in December at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. as part of the 75th anniversary for the Fulbright Scholar Program. This is a huge honor, absolutely huge. I got to watch the entire show. The clip is in your report if you have time to watch it. He dances with the Joint Forces Mixed Abilities Dance Company. So I want to wish everybody a very happy holiday and a happy new year. And we'll end with just a short clip just to see what Tim Bruno, what his dance routine was like. Thank you.
Performing tonight on behalf of Danceability are Timothy Bruno Hibbler, Maria Alvarez Preto, and Karen Daly, who was part of our training in Mongolia. They will perform an excerpt from our original piece, We Carry On, to music by Cullen Vance. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing that, Marge. That was fantastic and something to really be proud of. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and move us on to our next round of public comment. This is our regular public comment for our board meeting. And again, Board Policy 320 states that the board will not respond directly to issues raised by the audience, but will refer those issues to the president for appropriate action. Deborah, do we have anyone wishing to provide public comment during the board meeting tonight?
We did not receive any requests to provide public comment at the board meeting tonight.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for confirming that. And I also don't see anybody in the attendees part of the meeting, so I will move us on to the consent agenda. Is there any item in the consent agenda that a board member would care to pull tonight before we move on to approving the consent agenda?
I wanted to pull item I, the calendar.
Okay, and then Angela, thanks for raising your hand. What did you want to pull?
I'd like to pull H, Bond Oversight Committee appointments, and J, COVID Ventilation Project Emergency Procurement, please.
Okay, so I've got H, I, and J. Was there anything else? Okay, seeing none.
Move
Rosie?
Move approval of the consent agenda.
Great, thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, so Rosie has moved approval of the consent agenda and Austin has seconded. Donna, can you call the roll, please?
Holly Johnson,
Here.
is that an I?
Aye.
Right, okay. Angela Van Kraus,
Aye.
Mike Eister,
Aye.
Austin Polnaghy,
Aye.
Steve Mattel,
Aye.
Rosie Pryor,
Aye.
Lisa Fragola.
Aye.
Thanks.
Okay, so we will look at those pulled consent agenda items in order, alphabetical order as part of our action items. So let's go ahead and start with item H, Bond Oversight Committee appointments. Angela?
Thank you. I think, so I was asking in advance about just the process for either reconfirming members or posting positions as terms expire. And it sounds like the intent of the charter, although I don't necessarily know if the language is super clear or if I was looking at the final charter from what I found in board docs. The intent from Tom was to allow continuation of membership in the committee. And I just wanted to make sure that we as a board have sort of discussed that and we're like proactively in favor of that approach and not just sort of letting it slide without attention. So that's all.
Okay. And also for clarification of other board members, for all board members, the Bond Oversight Committee members serve a 3-year term. They're allowed to serve 2 consecutive terms. And these particular individuals have only served 1 year because we just started the committee and we randomly selected people to serve 1, 2, and 3 so that they didn't all expire at the same time. So these individuals are, they've served 1 year and they would be moving to serve the 2nd year to continue participating in the Bond Oversight Committee. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none, I do need a motion to approve item H, the Bond Oversight Committee appointments.
I'd make a motion to approve the Oversight Committee appointments.
Second?
Second.
Okay, so that motion is moved by Austin and seconded by Rosie. Donna, can you call the roll for approving the Bond Oversight Committee appointments?
Holly Johnson,
Aye.
Angela Van Kraus,
No.
Mike Eister,
Aye.
Austin Fullnagy,
Aye.
Steve Mattel,
Aye.
Rosie Pryor,
Aye.
Lisa Fragala.
Aye, that motion carries. So let's move on to the 2023-24 academic calendar. Steve?
Yeah, thanks. I read this and my first observation was, why is the board getting involved in this level of detail? But and then here I am getting involved in this level of detail. So I recognize the irony. Nonetheless, I noticed that this past September, there was a meeting scheduled board that involved board members. I don't remember precisely which one it was that fell on one of the high holidays. I can't remember. It was either Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur. And that happens frequently, not just at LCC, but at events all over, everywhere you look. And it's largely because the Jewish calendar, of course, is not precisely in sync with the calendar that we're largely accustomed to. So those dates, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Passover, shift by 2 weeks or 3 weeks every year, and to catch people off guard. I just think it would be a nice thing for us to consider listing those holidays. They're not observed. We don't give people the day off, but neither do we give the day off for Indigenous Peoples Day, and that's recognized on the calendar, which I'm glad to see. It would help with, I think, our inclusivity agenda. We have colleagues and students who choose not to attend school on those days. My wife doesn't go to work on those days, so she can observe those holidays, and it helps for the rest of us to understand the reason why. So I would encourage us in the future to include those days as part of our larger agenda, to be more inclusive of people's religious faiths.
Great, thank you for acknowledging that, Steve. I appreciate it. Paul, did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I'll just follow up. Thanks for that comment, Steve. And we struggled with that on this calendar. We have a few different calendars that we manage at Lane. This one in particular is the academic calendar, which really sets the start and stop dates and recognized campus closures. More of a student-facing academic calendar. We did include on this one Indigenous Peoples Day, even though the college is open. We did include that mark on the calendar, but I do understand what you're saying and appreciate that. And we are working on consolidating calendars, so there might be an opportunity to be able to list those religious holidays from a variety of different religions on a composite calendar as well. This one was just to get board approval for term dates for the most part and college closure dates.
Great, Mike?
Yes, I like that idea, Steve, and I appreciate, Paul, your comment about a variety of religious holidays, because there are others. I think it can be complicated to try to be sure that you're being comprehensive. But I appreciate the effort, and I think it's a good idea to move in that direction.
Okay, any other discussion?
I'm sorry, Lisa, I'm having trouble with my Zoom features, and I can't raise my hand as quickly as I would like to. I guess I'll raise my real
I'll look for a real one. Thank you, Steve.
Paul, it's just a question for you. I appreciate, the complexity, and I understand, you're trying to keep all of that to a single page and focus on things that, that are in direct response to academic concerns. I get all that. And so, I'm not going to make too significant of an objection to this, but I do think that there's some value there, because there will be some percent of students and faculty who don't show up that day, and people often sort of wonder why. And I know that it happens with my family. You don't always feel like having to explain yourself year in and year out as to why you're going to take that day off, and just simply being able to point to the calendar and remind folks, well, it's an important holiday for me. So my question, I suppose, is this a time-sensitive item? Does this need to be approved tonight for any reason, or can we take a little bit more time to consider ways to accommodate this request without, pushing it onto a second page or blowing the thing up in in ways that, suddenly we're having to list all kinds of holidays and religious days of observance that just become complex?
I think we do have a little bit of time. I'm not sure how much. I'd have to check with my registrar on that as far as timelines. I think where I would like to invest some time, though, is engaging the community, campus community at large in what are those items that we would include, right? I think that, we want to be as inclusive as we can. We don't want to be exclusive, certainly. But again, in recognition that there are many religious high holidays that we would want to include. And so doing that in a way I think that is presentable, legible, easy to understand, I think is worth exploring, and we're certainly willing to do that.
So you'd be supportive of a motion to pull this item from the consent calendar this month and revisit it a month from now?
I guess, yes. The question I have, though, is one about really approving the academic calendar versus the board's preference on how we portray religious holidays on a calendar. We're really trying to get a sense of start and stop dates, campus closure dates, and things like that. That's the important piece for us for this calendar. And maybe there's a better way to present that other than in a calendar form. And we can work on a calendar that's a more inclusive calendar with regards to those high holidays from a style point of view. We can certainly do that as well.
So, Steve, one thing I might suggest is my understanding is that we do need to pass the academic calendar in a timely fashion. And we do have a process that we have gone through for other days, like the Indigenous Peoples Day, and for other recognizing other days here. And perhaps we could put that on a future meeting agenda to take a look at for that process to flesh it out so that we make sure we're covering both. Austin? You're muted, Austin.
I will make a motion to approve the academic calendar and to proceed with that. I think we should have a work conversation. On a different note, we should probably have a work conversation or a work meeting around this topic, though.
Do I have a second for that motion?
Second.
So Austin moves approval of the academic calendar and Rosie has seconded it. Any further discussion? Austin, did you want to speak more to that?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I definitely want to be inclusive in not only our calendar, but in our community and our culture and the dynamics of our institutions. So I really do appreciate Steve bringing this conversation up and bringing this topic up. These are the conversations we should have.
Thank you. Rosie?
Thank you. I agree with Austin. I'm really grateful to Steve for bringing this up. I think the board should be very clear this evening that it's desirous of administration bringing a revised version of a calendar back to the board just to affirm the administration's intention to honor the request. I think in the short term, we do need to give administration the approval for the academic calendar.
Mike?
Yeah, I'd just like to say to Steve that I appreciate your focus on not getting into the weeds, but this was certainly a topic that was well worth spending some time attending to. So thank you for raising it.
Any other discussion? Steve?
I've just gotten a little lost. On the one hand, I hear a motion, to proceed as is, and I'm also hearing Rosie, say, but we're going to address this issue at a later date. I'm not sure how those two reconcile in the motion, so it's hard for me to be clear as to what I'm supporting or not supporting.
We have a motion to approve the 2023-24 academic calendar on the table. And so once we finish with that motion, I would like to direct the president to bring this additional item back to us in January. Does that clarify?
Yeah, thanks.
Yep. Okay. So any other conversation about the motion on the table, which is to approve the 2023-24 academic calendar? Okay, seeing none. Donna, can you call the roll, please?
Holly Johnson,
Aye.
Angela Van Kraus,
Aye.
Mike Eister,
Aye.
Austin Fullnagy,
Aye.
Steve Mattel,
Aye.
Rosie Pryor,
Aye.
Lisa Fragala.
Aye. That motion carries. And Marge, are you clear on what we want to bring back to the board in January?
I am, but I wanted to ask Paul, I'm not sure if the January board meeting's the 12th, if that's enough time for us to meet with like diversity council, registrar. What do you
No,
think, Paul?
no, we don't have any meetings that times that would scheduled. What I would recommend is that what you have basically approved by this vote is again, bear in mind, this is not next year's calendar, but the following year even. So what you all have approved are start and stop dates for the term and dates when the college is closed or no classes are. We will work on a better way to present that in a way that makes it more inclusive, and we can list, maybe not in the calendar per se, but list those observances and those other holidays that we might want to put in there for inclusivity. So we'll work on doing that. I think we should engage with Diversity Council and the campus and community a little bit larger on what are those holidays we would want to include. What do we want to recognize in the list per se?
Steve, is that going to be okay? Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I don't want to make folks work any harder over the Christian holidays than they otherwise would have. So January is no rush for me. And I have lots of trust in Paul that he'll take the suggestion in the spirit it was given and, work hard to, find ways to, find that balance. And I trust that he'll report out, as is necessary. I wasn't looking for an opportunity, for a lot more than that, but just sort of recognizing that that it's an important thing, and I trust that you'll handle it well and share back with us when you're ready.
We certainly will, and it's a project, Steve. Honestly, we've already got under work where we're working on trying to coordinate calendars and show things in a way and be as inclusive as we can. So I appreciate the comments, and I certainly will bring that back to you in a timely manner.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're quite welcome. Thank you for pointing that out, Steve. I appreciate it.
Hey, good conversation. I'm going to move us on to item J, the COVID ventilation project emergency procurement. Angela?
Thank you. This is another one I was asking about in advance. My question when it comes to spending money is the same question every time. Is it money that we already planned to spend? Obviously, this emergency procurement is not money that we planned to spend. And if it's not money that we plan to spend, i.e. not budgeted, what are we going to give up? What are we going to not spend money on as a result? And so I see the response from Zach, thank you, indicates that the college will have fewer funds available to offset institutional lost revenue, but I'm not really clear what that means. Are there things that we will not be spending money on as a result of this?
Zach?
How are we going to
I'll take this. Thank you for the question. Yes, so part of the higher education emergency relief funds was that we work on health and safety measures related to COVID. So enhancing ventilation fell directly into the prevention category. So this is a project that we knew and had initially set aside funds for in the summer out of those awards to fund. As that work has progressed, as we thought, they found more issues that we needed to address. So this is a request to increase the amount from the PERF grants. So what we got from the Department of Education to pay for this work. You are correct in that the offset, as I discussed in the information report last month, that the offset would come from kind of the planned usage of institutional loss revenue. So when we're spending money or overages, lack of better words, on these other items, it does take some of those dollars away to cover our tuition and fees revenue loss.
Austin?
let me get the language up here. I just wanted to make a motion to approve the increased amount. Let's see here, that the board approve the use of the emergency procurement for contracts which may exceed the $149,000 threshold that we approved in July, allocation to an additional $200,000 to $600,000 total.
Do I have a second?
Second.
So that motion is moved by Austin, seconded by Rosie. Austin, did you want to speak to your motion?
Yeah, I remember when we voted on this, and yeah, obviously it was meant for the purposes of prevention, protection. And I remember in the conversation that there was concerns obviously with increased electrical use and other concerns as well. And I want to definitely validate those concerns. But I feel like this is one of those items where, you know, I grew up in Idaho, and our pipes burst in the wintertime because it gets so cold. And you can spend a little bit of money to prevent that from happening, or you can do nothing and let the pipes burst. And then that's a very costly impact to the house. So I see that this is a kind of a similar expense. So,
Rosie?
Thank you. For my way of thinking, the roof on our house has failed. And while we ordinarily might not have the money to repair it, we've had a death in the family and we've inherited some money. Let's use it to fix the roof.
Any other discussion on this topic?
Just getting clear about Austin's motion. It applies to this particular incident only, right? This is not a broad change in.
Correct. This applies
emergency declaration.
to consent agenda item J, the COVID ventilation project emergency procurement. Just this one specific piece. Rosie, did you have another comment? Okay. Any other discussion or questions? Okay, seeing none, we have a motion on the table to approve the use of an emergency procurement for contracts which may exceed $999 threshold and increase the July allocation by an additional $200,000 to $600,000 total. Donna, could you call the roll, please?
Holly Johnson,
Aye.
Angela Van Kraus,
Aye.
Mike Eister,
Aye.
Austin Folneggy,
aye.
Steve Mattel,
Aye.
Rosie Pryor,
Aye.
Lisa Fragola.
Aye, that motion carries. Okay, I'm going to move us on to the strategic plan. Before we begin, I just want to give a little bit of background about where we are in the process. So an ad hoc committee of the board did meet with the president. So thank you to both Rosie and Angela for working with me to do that. And we did meet to look at the recommendation from the advisory committee, the steering committee for the strategic plan, which we have received information from in the past. The primary thing that we met to do was to clean up language, get rid of redundancies, and to make clarifications. And that was our primary focus. We did really work to maintain the intent of the steering committee, at the same time that we did also take into consideration feedback from multiple councils in the college. So we reviewed that input, and we took a look at the goals and the objectives. One thing we also did do was that at a previous board meeting, the one piece that the board had approved and clearly communicated their commitment to was very specific language for the goals. And some of those goals did come back to us with revisions from the steering committee. And so we returned the language of the goals to the original goal language that was approved by the board. The last final thing that I want to say is there was a tremendous amount of input on ideas for strategies and lots of great input. The strategies are very operational, and so we are forwarding all of those recommendations to the president, and there will be continued engagement with stakeholders around developing the strategies. So we are focused on the goals and the objectives tonight. And a final thing would also be that if there are any Scribner's errors, punctuation, capitalization, those, formatting, please feel free to send those to the board secretary, and we'll make those corrections. And thank you to the board members who did already send those corrections, and we have made them. So I think what I'd like to do is if someone could pull up the strategic plan, and so we can see it. And then we will start with, is there any discussion or questions or comments from board members? Rosie?
Thank you. Lisa, I don't know how you want to proceed through this. Are you asking on the whole document, so you want to address the entire document, or were you wanting to go through it?
I think we've done a lot of work on this. I think tonight I'm looking for overall comments, but if there are big things that are missing or important things we'd like to add, I would love to hear that.
I have two.
Great.
And I will report to my colleagues that these are two items that we discussed in our subcommittee meeting. So Lisa and Angela are aware that I'm proposing to bring these up. We discussed them and I was the note taker. So under the goal number 2, increase enrollment, what I can report to my colleagues is that I have never seen the college aggressively engage in marketing activities. We talked about that in our subcommittee. The college has historically underfunded marketing. And if we really need to build enrollment, and we really do, we need to use the tools at hand, and they do have a cost associated with them. I would be content to know that administration would address this as a strategy, because it sort of feels like a strategy to me to build enrollment. It doesn't exactly, I mean, you don't have an objective of creating a marketing program. A marketing program is a strategy to increase enrollment, to my way of thinking. But I wanted to share that first point with my colleagues and get your feedback.
Okay, so I do see 2 hands, but I'm looking for any feedback or response to Rosie on this idea. If somebody has any, you can just go ahead and jump in, because I can't see anybody right now.
So Rosie, I think it's a good idea. I think the role of the board is to suggest that good idea strategy to the administration and assume that the administration will take it under advisement.
Yeah.
Angela and Austin both have their hands up.
And they had their hands up before you started to speak, but Angela or Austin, did you have feedback on this idea?
Yeah, just on the note of feedback, I have a separate thing I'll bring up. But I completely agree with you, and especially in marketing and targeting specific programs that our workforce especially needs. Those are very important to market for those specific programs and so forth. So yeah, no, I completely agree that marketing is one of those things that are always underinvested, and I think this is an opportunity to create an objective that is the spirit of it is around that. And increase enrollment, I think, is great to have that as an objective. I would almost say it should be the number one objective to a certain degree, but I understand why it's where it's at.
Okay, so I'm also really supportive of the marketing, and I appreciate the thought of it as a strategy. And so, Rosie, are you comfortable with it being a strategy recommendation to the president?
I am, as long as my colleagues are. I
Okay.
mean, certainly it's an expectation the board can have of administration that it finally prepares some adequate marketing plans and targeted marketing strategies. I have one more, but Angela had her hand up and I didn't know if that was on this point or not. No, okay. May I do my one more?
Yep.
Because this, I feel like this is a report out from our subcommittee meeting. If you look at goal number 5, improve financial stability and sustainability. In our subcommittee meeting and looking at the language, we felt a piece was missing as an objective. And it would be along the lines of standardize the means of measuring institutional effectiveness. Not that administration isn't intending to do that, but I thought the subcommittee felt like it was important that that be an objective in this strategic plan, that we spend some time standardizing how LCC measures institutional effectiveness.
Okay, so is there any other discussion just on that one point that Rosie made? Okay, not seeing any. I'm going to go to Angela next. And Angela, actually, I'll say this for everybody. If people could just identify the goal section, then that'll help us get it on the screen.
Thank you. I've switched my device. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I have 2 comments as well. First one is on goal 4, so up just a bit. In our subcommittee meeting, I had thought that we had discussed removing the words using the equity lens, and maybe I didn't actually remember where we landed on that. I thought that the discussion was about the feeling as though that might be a little bit too strategy level, and that the point is to reduce access barriers and improve retention and completion rates, and that the administration should use whatever tools are appropriate to achieve that objective.
Angela, you're right about that. What our subcommittee discussed was that the wording there would be assess programs to reduce barriers.
And I actually remember that we discussed leaving in the word equity lens because it clarifies what we're talking about in terms of how we're assessing programs. So I'm not clear on that at this time, but I do remember the conversation, and I actually thought we had discussed leaving it in. So a little bit of lack of clarity from our ad hoc there. And so I am supportive of leaving it in. I think not having the word equity in that statement makes it very watered down in terms of how we're reducing barriers and improving retention and completion rates. Greg, I see your hand is raised.
Yes, I'm sorry I'm running a little late. I would concur with you, Lisa, that equity is important to be weaved throughout the document. And we're right now on the precipice of working on our next 5-year diversity plan. So as we move forward with the strategic plan, we want to be able to integrate and merge the diversity plan with the strategic plan. And equity is a big part of it.
Okay, thank you, Greg. Okay, so I'm going to keep us to this point, and then I think Angela has a second one. Is there any other conversation around this objective? Angela?
Is it possible that we can identify that the objective is about equity without necessarily specifying what tools administration must use?
I'm sure there is. This is the language that came from the steering committee.
I'm not going to die on this hill. I do think that it's too strategic for this, but I'm not. If that's the consensus, then I'm willing to support it.
Okay. Is there any objection to retaining that objective?
It really belongs under goal number 1. If its focus is equity, it belongs under goal number 1.
Okay. So it is assessing a program, which is a part of continuous improvement. And I think it was actually originally in equity, and we decided to move it to this section because it's an assessment piece for continuous improvement, is my recollection. So Greg, did you have further explanation on that? I just saw your hand. I didn't know if it was.
I just muted myself by accident. Yeah, I do. I think that I've talked to some of our cohorts among the 17 community colleges and the 8 diversity officers that are in that group. We have really talked about how we integrate equity throughout the college language, starting out with the mission, the values, the goals, all of that. But the equity lens is a strategic tool. And we're in the process of revamping that a bit, because as we looked at people who were using the tool, had used the tool, it wasn't quite fitting what the needs were. So I just want to make sure that we disaggregate the concept and intention of equity from the equity lens. Does that make sense?
So are you suggesting that it would be an improvement to remove the word lens and to leave the concept of equity in concurrence with Angela?
Yes.
Okay.
I think that would be fine. And as we move through the diversity plan, you will see equity lens all through that piece as we move that forward. And hopefully we're going to have that completed by May.
So I'm wondering if the board would be fine if we leave this objective in with the understanding that we will remove the word lens and assess programs using an equity approach to reduce access barriers and improve retention and completion rates. And I'm wondering if that addresses people's concerns. Angela, does that address your original concern?
I don't think I'm super clear how that works. Are we approving the strategic plan tonight?
So the hope was that we would approve the strategic plan tonight, yes. But if we don't, then that is fine also. And so we could right now take a straw poll on changing this language, or we could decide to refer things farther on. I think that what I'm asking you is, would a language change to that extent address your concern?
Yeah, it would.
Okay, great. And so I would like to suggest that we change the language, make an attempt to change that language now so that we could potentially move the strategic plan forward tonight. And so I'm going to suggest that we take a straw poll on this and approve the strategic plan at the end, and that it would be assess programs using an equity approach to reduce, or how about this? Assess programs using equity strategies to reduce access barriers and improve retention and completion rates. Should I repeat that? Okay, can I have a straw poll on that, please? Just a thumbs up would be fine.
I thought you were
And
going to repeat it. I'm sorry.
Yes, yes.
oh, thank you, Holly, for the voice. You want me to repeat it, Angela?
Yes.
Okay, I need the screen up. I need the screen back up. So it would be assess programs using equity strategies to reduce access barriers and improve retention and completion rates. So I would be removing the and changing lens to strategies. Assess programs using equity strategies to reduce access barriers and improve retention and completion rates. Anybody else need me to? Okay, so can I have a straw poll on that, please? Okay. All right. And I heard Holly earlier. Steve, could I just get a voice from you if you're not going to have your screen on?
Oh, you can't see me?
Now I can.
Oh, okay. I thought, yeah.
Okay, great. I don't know what was going on there. Awesome. Maybe it turned off when you don't move. Okay, let's go back to the strategic plan. Thank you. Don, I'm just going to check with you that you got that language.
Yes, I did get that language, and thanks for repeating it so we could all be clear.
Great. All right. Happy to do that. And let's go back. I think Angela's got one more thing, and then we're going to go to Austin. Angela?
Yeah, I do have one more thing, but I'm trying to find the it's in goal 6. I remember that.
Okay, so scroll
And
down.
I think it was number 4 under the human subsection. It reads, identify actions necessary to ensure the safety of LCC students and employees. And I wondered if it is sufficient to identify actions or if we should also specify that we would take steps to implement those actions.
Okay, so do you have a suggestion? What would you like to see here? Would you like to see? Go ahead.
Probably something like identify and implement actions necessary to ensure the safety, etc. But it was a genuine question for the board if it's sufficient to identify or if we do need to specify that action will be taken.
Okay, and so is there any feedback about adding identify and implement actions necessary to ensure the safety of LCC students and employees? I would be supportive of that language.
Yeah, this is awesome. Oh, this is awesome. I would be supportive of that language too. And yeah, no, I think it's really important that we identify and implement actions, especially around safety. This is one of the things that the voters approved the bond measure for. And yeah, I think it's also a really important objective.
Okay, and is there any objection to adding implement? Okay, hearing none, we'll add implement here. I like it. Okay, so I'm going to move on to Austin.
Actually, more of a process question. If I make a motion to approve the strategic plan, because I love the conversation that's happening and I don't want to diminish it, can I make a motion to approve it, but continue this conversation? And
absolutely. You may make
excellent.
a motion to approve it and we may continue.
I make a motion to approve the strategic plan, the 2022 to 2027 strategic plan.
Second,
Awesome. Thank you both. Moved by Austin to approve the strategic plan, seconded by Rosie. Okay, Austin, did you want to speak to your motion, or did you have any other comments?
Yeah, no, just I do appreciate the language around safety. I appreciate the language around workforce. Yeah, I overall I'm really supportive of the strategic plan. So yeah.
Yeah. I do have two things I'd like to suggest that I'd like to bring to the board. One would be in goal area number 1. And I think that we've had many conversations as a board about the importance of increasing the diversity of our staff, faculty, and administration. And I think in order to improve student access and achievement within this goal of diversity, equity, inclusion, I think that's a piece that I see missing here, honestly. And so I would like to propose adding increasing recruitment and retention of racially, culturally, and linguistically diverse faculty, staff, and administration. And if we could talk about it at the conceptual level, I am happy to add that language somewhere where we can see it. So is there any conversation, any thoughts about that, or any objection?
Would you be able to repeat the statement again, just so?
Yes. And so it's increase recruitment and retention, because recruitment and retention are both important, of racially, culturally, and linguistically diverse faculty, staff, and administration.
This is just my opinion. I almost want that as a separate objective.
Yeah, it's an objective, not a goal.
Yeah. So, so it's an objective, and it would be in the list of objectives there.
Yes, a separate
excellent.
bullet.
Cool. Excellent. Yep. Yeah, because I don't necessarily want to edit that first bullet point because. So yes, I would love for it to be a separate bullet point in addition to what's up there. So.
Thank you. I see it as a separate bullet point, and would be happy with it as the last one. Mike?
I'm a little bit fuzzy about the distinction between ethnicity, racially, and national diversity.
So I would be very comfortable also using BIPOC in there, but I know some people feel like that is limiting. So race, culture, and language are the things I chose to focus on. Steve?
And just to be clear, you want this under goal 1?
Yes.
And what I'm just, because this one's largely focused on student success, access and achievement. And you're, bringing up a point about, faculty hiring and recruitment. I'm just curious why you want it under goal 1 instead of, I forget the goal number, but there's one further down there that I think it's 6, right? That has a human component.
I think that's great feedback, Steve. I would be happy to put it in the human infrastructure section. I think that's very useful. I think of it as an important component to student success and achievement, but I like that idea. And I did see Rosie supportive of that. So I would.
Lisa, are you wanting to replace the second bullet under goal 6, human recruit and retrain a diverse and stable workforce, with what you just said?
Yes, I would be happy with that.
Otherwise, it's redundant.
You're correct. I was thinking of it as a point of student achievement, way to support student achievement. And thank you both for that feedback. So I would be happy to see it here to replace that. Mike?
Sorry,
So is there any objection to adding that here in place of recruit and retain a diverse and stable workforce? And can I see a straw poll on that? Okay. I didn't see all thumbs up. So is there anybody opposed to it? I'm asking that question as well.
I'm not opposed to it. I just think the language we have fills the bill.
Okay.
Well, and I'm starting to feel uncomfortable with the process that we're in. It's just creating a lot of pressure in this moment to just say, yeah, let whatever it takes to get this thing passed. That's the pressure I'm feeling. And my guess is others have it on their minds as well. I don't think it's the best way to develop a strategic plan. I'm at the moment where I'm actually going to just abstain from participating in the approval, because just to let folks know that I'm worried about the process by which we're doing this, that we're tacking things on and making slight changes to a high level strategic plan at the very last moment. And I don't think it's the most useful and effective thing that we can and should be doing for the institution.
Did you have a comment?
Yeah, I mean, just mostly that I hope that the motion that I made isn't rushing anybody. I don't want anybody to feel like I'm trying to push this through and get anyone to pass this. I definitely want to encourage this conversation and take the time here to have a broad conversation. So please don't let the fact that I made a motion create any sort of sense of urgency or anything like that. I definitely want to promote conversation and thoughtful conversation around this really important document.
Okay, so I guess I'll just take a temperature check. One of the things that we discussed in the ad hoc committee was that we would bring any new ideas to the board rather than adding them as part of the ad hoc committee. That was one way that we tried not to change the intent too much of the work of the steering committee. And so I do think that it would be good to move the strategic plan forward this evening, because and we don't have to, but it would be good to move us on to the next phase of working on the strategies. And we also had planned to work on our board goals at the January retreat, and do need a strategic plan, had discussed having a strategic plan to be able to do that. And so I think that if we feel like we need to keep working on it, then that's fine. We don't need to approve it tonight. And I'm curious where board members are in that regard. I heard Steve say that he is uncertain about whether or not he wants that. Mike, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I guess I wouldn't want to tackle many more revisions, but I feel that I'm able to sort of synthesize what's been proposed so far in the meeting without feeling pressure. I will either vote for or against the plan based on, I feel comfortable voting for or against the plan based on the discussion that we've had tonight. So I'm ready to do that. If we have 4 more revisions, though, I might be where Steve is.
Okay, Does anybody else have feedback in that regard?
This is maybe just more for future discussion or the next time we go through this process. We all come to these strategic planning processes with slightly different approaches. None of us participates in them so frequently that we all sort of have a common language or common, platform to proceed from. So I recognize, that, and therefore, it takes a while for us all to sort of settle into whatever it is that we're doing. However, my own sense of this is that we want this to bubble up from faculty and folks and be vetted by our senior most decision makers, right? Marge and her team. And I think our job is to ask tough questions about things that we might think are missing. But I don't think our job is to make revisions directly. I feel like our job is to point out where things may be missing, and then give our leadership time to think about that and respond thoughtfully. I think making, small revisions to this, criteria and that objective in this kind of setting leaves them out, and it's their job at the end of the day to implement this. They're not in a position to say that's not a good idea. They're not going to do that right here and now. And not to say that things that we're suggesting are bad ideas, but they're left out of this discussion, and in my view, they're extremely important to its success. To just simply ask them in this setting, do you agree? It's not very effective.
Rosie?
Thank you. I'm a little frustrated is too strong a word, but the two items that I brought forward were discussed by the ad hoc committee, which was charged with smoothing the language. We especially wanted to pay attention to changes to goal statements, which we felt were not made them no longer the goal statements the board had approved. It was my understanding that my colleagues on the ad hoc committee wanted me to bring those two items forward. I was not aware, nor do I think any of the balance of the members of the board approach this with the expectation that now is the time to bring in totally new objective statements that nobody's ever seen or heard of. An example, Lisa, that I would use is, I think your language is much more precise, but the spirit of it is already existing in the objective statement: recruit and retain a diverse and stable workforce. I think that speaks to where you're trying to go. I don't think now is the time for us to be processing new and different objectives. I think we should deal with the plan draft that we have in front of us and either approve it or don't approve it. I'm ready to approve it.
So I would like to clarify that the two things that I wanted to bring forward tonight were both based on feedback from College Council and from Faculty Council. So I was responding to the feedback from our stakeholders. And so I apologize for not making that clear. And I did not suggest them in the ad hoc committee because I felt like they were new ideas that I thought we had agreed we would bring to the board. I do agree that the spirit of what I communicated is represented in the draft, but I do think it's minimal compared to what we could express. So I will withdraw it based on the feedback that I just heard. But I do have one more that I would like to present that came from feedback from our stakeholders, from College Council, and from faculty. And it was all available to you in the information you received in your packet. And that one would have to do with financial planning. And it ties financial planning to our mission. And I don't believe that there was something within financial planning that connected to the college's mission. It talks about ending fund balance, mitigating risks and emergencies, advancing the mission of the college by growing an alumni association, advancing the mission of the college through increasing development outcomes, and increasing the collaboration of the college with the LCC Foundation. I would like for us to consider engaging in financial planning that prioritizes the educational and student service mission of the college. And I do feel like that is an important piece around connecting our financial stability and sustainability and the mission and vision of the college. And I'm bringing it forward as a suggestion from some of the councils of the college. And if there's no support for it, I will withdraw it. Rosie?
I'm not supportive of that, but I feel like that's what we do every day. I mean, it's sort of like writing out what are we here to do? I mean, I don't, if we're not prioritizing financial planning to support the mission of the college, what on earth are we doing?
Okay, feedback taken. Is there any support for that? And if not, I can withdraw it.
This is Austin. I'm supportive of adding it in there. I know it is one of those, yeah, that's why we're here. And there's a few things, there's a few objectives and goals that, yeah, that's why we're here, that are already written in this document. And I'm okay with seeing that in here, so.
Okay, well, thank you for that support, Austin, but I'm not seeing any other support from board members for adding that objective. I'll be clear. I'm not saying people are not objective of that statement. I would not say that about my fellow colleagues on the board. So I'll withdraw that suggestion and move us on. Are there any other comments or ideas that board members want to bring forward regarding the strategic plan? If not, I will move us on to a vote on the motion that we have on the floor. Mike?
I would just like to say that this is important enough that if, I think we need a unanimous vote, and if we have anybody who's not prepared to vote in favor of it tonight, that I think we need to postpone. I also think that we have enough of an idea of what will be in the strategic plan, although there may be some specifics missing, that we could go ahead in our retreat to do whatever other planning we need to do based on what we do already know about the strategic plan. So for whatever it's worth, that's what I have to offer.
Austin?
I just want to support Mike's statement as far as unanimous support and so forth. And I just want to really appreciate the thoughtful conversation around this document and the strategic plan in general. I really appreciate it.
Okay, so Angela?
The risk of belaboring the point, I don't feel strongly about unanimous support. I feel that as a board, we support whatever the board decides, regardless of how we as individuals voted. That's our charge. And so being unanimous is less important to me. I don't see that that's a reason to delay a vote.
Okay, and so just for clarification, we have a motion on the table to approve the strategic plan. I believe we made two small changes to it. One was to take out the word strategies from the equity, take out the word lens and add strategies for the equity lens statement there. And the other was to add the word implement in the section that Angela identified. So If there is no further discussion, I'm going to call the question. The motion that we have in front of us is to approve the strategic plan. It was moved by Austin and I think seconded by Rosie. Donna, can you call the roll, please?
Okay, Holly Johnson,
Aye.
Angela Van Kraus,
Aye.
Mike Eister.
I would like to vote out of order and have you come back to me.
Okay. Austin Fullnagy,
Aye.
Steve Mattel,
I'm going to abstain.
Rosie Pryor,
Aye.
Lisa Fragola,
Aye.
Mike Eister.
I'll vote aye.
Okay, so that motion carries. If you'd like, the record can show that there was one abstention. All right, so let's go ahead and move us on to our next agenda item, which is, let's see, Building 12 emergency procurement. And I believe that we have Tom Goodhue here with us this evening to discuss that. Tom, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Fragola. Building 12, I hope what we've written up is as clear as can be. This is an ever-evolving piece. We have, as I think you are aware, we have a project that we're looking at renovating the building. Have a design team on site and doing engineering studies and design work on it. In that process, we knew going into this that there needed to be work on the roof. Some of the initial engineering studies showed us more concern than we hoped for, I'll put it. So out of an abundance of caution, we felt it might be appropriate to get some additional shoring in before winter sets in and we have snow on it. Just as, again, something to make sure we preserve the building that we're investing in with design funds on it. In talking with President Hamilton, we decided that our best bet was to use an emergency procurement solution where we could move very quickly. And while we're moving ahead with this, and we're trying to get this installed actually next week. I met with the contractor today and we're looking at doing that. The emergency procurement does require us to bring it before the board as soon as possible. So that's why we're here today. We're also going to ask you, even though it is below the 150,000 threshold, for your approval of the contract, because it allows us a little more flexibility in it should something come up in the installation or require us to change something with the shoring along the way. It would require a change order that might go slightly over that 150,000. So that is the reason for the action item on it. With that, I'm going to pause and see where the questions are before I confuse us all anymore.
Okay, Austin.
Yeah, roofs are important. I've learned a lot recently about I've learned a lot about like the different support beams that actually go into like supporting a roof and how it all operates and so forth. Like what so and with that understanding, like these costs can go up pretty substantially pretty quickly. Like, so with that in mind, like this might be a hard answer or question to answer. Are we seeing essentially something where it's we're going to tear into the roof and then we're going to find more problems and then continue on from there?
Exactly. I understand the question completely. Have asked it many times myself in the last couple of weeks. The goal is to come in with some temporary scaffolding shoring towers in two key areas in the building and build 4 towers up, scaffolding similar to what you might see used around the outside of a building when they're doing things. We're going to go up and just reach up underneath the structure and touch the underside of the roof. Then if there's any snow loading, it'll come down and put weight onto these shoring towers. So going through a lot of engineering, looking at it, that all looks like the best bet. So we won't get into the challenges, the problems of tearing into the roof at this time. We get into the final solution, we'll get into that, and we're continuing to look at that. But that's, I'll be back in probably January or February with a larger contract approval, working towards that one. So does that help you?
Yeah. So essentially it's a temporary fix, just so it doesn't fall through.
Yeah, we are renting the scaffolding, getting it in hopefully next week or the week after, renting it through a year from March, so the next 2 snow seasons. And at that point, we plan to be under construction and have a long-term plan being constructed in place or in progress in that a summer from now. So that's how we've set this up.
Great.
So.
Angela?
Thank you. So I was asking in advance, of course, where the money is coming from, the usual questions. Thank you, Tom. You said it will come out of the contingency funding. And I'm just wondering sort of I don't think that I have a very good sense, and I probably should, of what our contingency funding budget looks like and what percentage of that this project will be. So what's left for all the other roofs we find problems with?
Well, we did budget a certain amount of that in. The contingency fund was 10% on a $25 million construction project. So it's a fairly significant contingency. We're early in the design. We're early in the procurement process. Really haven't started that, and unfortunately construction costs are going up. So it'll be an ongoing discussion. From the bond overall, our allocation also has about a 15% contingency that is not allocated at this point. So there are a couple of levels here as we move through. We're in our first projects. It's always challenging, but it was intentional to have these contingencies for certain things like that. And as I said, we had intended, we knew we were going to have to do some shoring in this project to fix the roof. The decision was that it was wise to expedite it and get it a little quicker than we had hoped, I think is the best way to put it. And therefore, and just to clarify that, it becomes a separate contract from the contract that I'll be coming forward with. So that is also the reason for asking your approval now for even though it's below 150, the 2 contracts are technically separate.
All right, I'm going to try to do this motion right here. In accordance, I make a motion in accordance with emergency procurement procedures, a contract in the amount of $121,565 be awarded to Lise Kuchar Lewis of Portland, Oregon for emergency repairs to the roof of building 12.
Is there a second? Okay,
Second.
so moved by Austin and seconded by Mike. Austin, did you want to speak to your motion?
Roofs are important.
Is there any other conversation? Okay, seeing none, I will ask Donna to call the roll for this.
Holly Johnson,
Aye.
Angela Van Kraus,
Aye.
Mike Eister,
Aye.
Austin Polnaghy,
Aye.
Steve Mattel,
Aye.
Rosie Pryor,
Aye.
Lisa Fragola.
Aye. So that motion carries. Thank you. And let's go ahead and move on to our last action item, redistricting. Brett?
Hi, thank you, Chair, members of the board, and President Hamilton. What you have before you this evening are 2 items for consideration: an updated zone map for the district that Lane Council of Governments prepared for us, and a resolution which we prepared at the request of Lane County Elections. To provide just a little bit of background on what's happened since the last meeting. As you recall, we received our population counts for the district updated after the last census. We have just under 390,000 residents in the LCC service district. When you divide those amongst our 5 zones, that means the population for 5 zones to be equal is about 77,921. And so we then make that our goal to make sure that the population variance between the 5 zones falls within 5% of one another. The current zones, we have a difference between some that are -3% and +6%. So when you add it up, the difference between some of our zones is as great as 9 to 10% right now. So that's why we're moving forward with redistricting and taking the guidance from the board. We waited for Lane County to update their commissioner district map. And some of you may not know this. I've learned a lot about redistricting through this process, since it's something that we appear to do once every 20 years. When Lane County passed its current charter in 1962, it was a couple of years before voters then approved the community college district. And so that's why we've had the similarity of our zones and the county commissioner districts for basically the almost the entire existence of the college. 10 years ago, we did not update our zones when the census came. And so that's why we had a little bit greater of a population variance this time around. And so following the guidance from the board, we waited until Lane County updated its commissioner district maps. And then we had Lane County prepare a map based off of the new boundaries that the county commissioners set. And when we reviewed the first draft, as you can see from the map that's included in your packet, there's a line that heads straight north, and it basically follows parallel to I-5. And on our first draft, Harrisburg fell into zone 1 on the western side of the map. And that actually kept our population variance between districts in excess of the 5%. So we have zone 4, which you'll see now in the map provided to you this evening. Zone 4 reaches across and includes Harrisburg and the populations that fall north of the Lane County border. We have about 4 places in our district where where we serve populations that are outside of Lane County. And so really the only adjustment that we made following the first draft that we looked at was to move Harrisburg into zone 4. Everything inside the boundaries of Lane County followed the new updated maps of the county commissioner districts as guidance from the board at the previous meeting. And so I'm happy to answer any questions. I do want to give thanks to LCOG staff, and in particular, Kyle Overstake, who's really helped us through this process. I'm sure you've seen there's been a lot of redistricting occurring locally. Just this week, the Eugene City Council updated their wards.
So Brett, can I ask for clarification? Do we need to both adopt the map and pass the resolution?
The resolution technically adopts the map. So really, you just need to approve the resolution this evening.
Okay, great. Thank you for that clarification. All right, so Austin, I see you have your hand up.
And thank you for asking that question, by the way. I make a motion to approve resolution 664 in matter of reviewing and modifying the district boundaries for zones used in the election of directors.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, so the motion to approve resolution number 664 is moved by Austin and seconded by Steve. Austin, did you want to speak to your motion?
Yeah, I like Harrisburg. I'm glad they're in my zone now. No, overall, yeah, I really appreciate those who've worked on this process. I know it's a very lengthy process, and I appreciate the board doing what we can to help that move along that process.
Rosie?
Is it possible? I'm not looking at the map that was provided to us today. I'm looking at the one that's in the packet. And so I'm a little confused about Harrisburg being way up north and zone 4, how Harrisburg fits into 4. So it wraps around now. Oh, okay. The one that's in our packet, I mean, makes it look like a a jump.
Did that clarify
you.
your question? Yep.
Yes, thank
Okay,
you.
great. Any other questions or comments from the board? Okay, so seeing none, we have a motion on the table to approve the resolution number 664, which includes adopting the proposed redistricting map. Donna, can you call the roll, please?
Holly Johnson,
Aye.
Angela Van Kraus,
Aye.
Mike Eister,
Aye.
Austin Folneggy,
Aye.
Steve Mattel,
Aye.
Rosie Pryor,
Aye.
Lisa Fragola.
Aye. So that motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And so, Brett, will there be any follow-up matters that you will need to bring to us regarding this?
The last official action that you'll need to take is approval of the minutes of this meeting next month. And we'll submit a copy of the minutes along with this resolution to Lane County Elections. And then the resolution calls for us to note on the official copy for the college that we have filed it with the county.
Great. But that's going to give the county what they need to move forward with precincting.
Correct.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to our single discussion item tonight. We have a diversity council report. And I believe we have Diversity Council Chair Carter here with us this evening. Great. I thought I saw you there. Welcome.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members of the board. Thank you, President Hamilton. I will begin this report that we have drafted. Now, I understand that you all asked for a strategic plan, and our strategy is to focus on our work plan because it is best for us to implement our objectives throughout the institution. Let me see. Do you all have this that you could share on your screen, and that way others can view it while I read along?
Sure. So could somebody pull up the Diversity Council report from the packet? Thank you. Is that what you needed?
Yes, thank you very much.
Awesome.
Mind you, there has been slight modifications, but majority of everything that is there, everyone has. So this report serves as an update of the 2021-22 work plan for the council. The council has some critical work ahead with the development of the next 5-year diversity plan, a reset on the equity lens training with a review and streaming of the process to make it more user-friendly. The council is moving to consolidate the climate study, review the diversity training for campus public safety staff, update completed tasks and status of projects currently underway, and update the council's long-range plans. So our diversity council work plan initiatives are the climate survey engagement, behavioral intervention / cultural competency and law enforcement involvement, student of concern, behavioral intervention, membership and charter review, non-discrimination policy, and development of training around pronouns. The climate study, the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and the Diversity Council have been engaged in the development of the campus climate study. The DEI office with a subcommittee of the council developed an RFP for firms to conduct the study. We did not receive any proposals for this work. A number of firms engaged in this work have been hampered by a reduction in workforce, thus limiting their capacity to do the work. We are working with Richard Plott, who is here present with us today, Chief Strategy and Planning Officer, to combine the climate study with another study sponsored by the Strategy and Planning Office to reissue an RFP that is designed to attract qualified firms to perform the needed work. Behavioral intervention and campus public safety training. The Diversity Council has worked closely with the Office of Campus Public Safety to train staff on equity and inclusion best practice. Lisa Rupp, Director of the Campus Public Safety Department, has collaborated with the DIE office to deliver culturally relevant mandatory training for the staff. Director Rupp submitted a report on this training to the board at an earlier board meeting. This training will continue by incorporating new department hires and updated training for all the staff. This also relates to our student of concern / behavioral intervention with feedback supported from the Diversity Council. Council membership, the Diversity Council has vacancies with the management representative and student representative. Recruiting is underway to fill these vacancies. A number of other staff have expressed interest in joining the council. New members from different factions of the representatives, new members from different factions of union representatives have already been approved within the Diversity Council and a projection of more to join in the near future. Intersectionality program development. This program is at the beginning of being formed. The DEI office has had some webinars and workshops that had touched on intersectionality. We are developing a program beginning with a literature review and research on comparable institutions, training efforts incorporating intersectionality training in the diversity portfolios. Pronoun training is a significant issue in the development of intersectional programming. The gender-based non-discrimination policy and procedures. This policy was developed over a number of years and was affirmed by College Council during the spring 2021 term. Human Resources is working on developing the appropriate set of procedures to implement the intention of this policy. Pronouns training was developed and delivered over several weeks during spring term. The DEI department contracted with the CM Hall from Western Oregon University to deliver this content. These workshops were effective and successful. More workshops and training will be developed from the DEI department, partnered with input and feedback from the Diversity Council. Staff development, collaboration with Human Resources on the recruitment and retention of a diverse workforce continues. Currently, Human Resources staff is working on the creation of a more effective recruitment strategy. The strategy is inclusive of affinity-based educational and professional organizations. Also, Human Resources has expressed interest in continuing to receive feedback from the Diversity Council about making improvements to this new implementation. So new initiatives is review of HR processes for inclusivity and practices that will yield more diverse candidates, including but not limited to criminal background check. This is aligned with staff development. The D Council, in collaboration with DEI office, is engaged in the development of a new 5-year diversity plan. This will include an assessment of the current 5-year plan that sunsets in 2022. We will look at the status of diversity programming college-wide. We will incorporate ongoing programming into the new 5-year plan. This will include goals, objectives, and a fluid, evolving calendar complete with strategic benchmarks. Focus on criminal / social justice. The college has had a long unrealized need to develop programming for ex-offenders re-entering the community. This work will be inclusive of the sponsors, ex-offender state program, and the federal drug court program led by Federal District Court Judge Ann Aiken. I hope I'm saying that right. Provost and Executive VP Paul Jarrell will be including in this planning process that will help connect the ex-offender community with the array of educational opportunities at the college and the Diversity Council. Last but not least, review of COPS policies to bring our institution up to date will be ongoing work with Michael Blade, General Counsel, and guidance from the Diversity Council. So now I open the floor for questions.
Great, thank you very much. Any questions regarding the Diversity Council report? Marge?
Thank you. I just want to really commend the work of the Diversity Committee and the DEI office. You know, I'm on a lot of state committees and with Greg, and Lane is far away exceeding what other colleges are doing because of their leadership, because of their work. There was recently an article out that's being passed all around the state about schools that a year ago, after George Floyd was murdered, said they were going to do this and said they were going to do that, but then they didn't follow through. And I just can't thank Deontay, Greg, and all of the college who's been working on these initiatives, because there's great follow through being done on the campus.
Thank you very much.
Marge. Any other comments or questions?
I have one.
Go ahead, Steve. And then I
Deontay, I'm
see-
just. Shall I go?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. So I'm having a little trouble with my Zoom tonight. I know I said that once before, but every time I hit a button, I get the spinning wheel of death. So I apologize. Deontay, thanks for the report. I just wanted you to give us a little more information about the first new initiative that you shared. It says, review of HR policies, including but not limited to the criminal background check. Can you just explain that a little bit more? What is it that you're thinking about doing differently from what we currently do?
So to elaborate on that piece, we are working with HR, Shane Turner specifically. He has a whole committee that he is in charge of, and they pretty much implement new policies around hiring, search committees, things of that nature, and also background checks. That is something that is subject to review. This is most recently new development, but we intend to have more observation in this process of our search committees and criminal background check to see what works, what doesn't, and where we need to make improvements. And if Greg would also like to touch on that, I'll let him, but if not, then.
Great, Greg, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, this process has been evolving for a while, really until Lisa came in as the director of the department. We didn't have diversity training. Well, we had some diversity training, let me put it to you that way, but not the training that we needed to align ourselves with the needs of our students as we move forward. So we started out with 3 trainings that were delivered by Carla Gary. They were excellent. All of the staff, I think only one person missed the training. So Lisa's done an excellent job of working with us. And you'll see some of that in previous reports. I think it was October report or November report, which she did on that. So that's what we're doing.
Greg, any other questions or comments regarding this report? Okay, I'm not seeing any raised hands. And great. Okay, I was wondering if you had anything else to share with us. Greg, thank you. Thank you very much to both of you for being here to share that information with us, and we look forward to updates as well. I'm going to go ahead and move us on to our report section of the agenda. And the first report we have is from the SGA and Jeremiah Vandegrift, the Lane SGA president. And I was looking for him in the group here, and I'm not seeing him. So I think he might be gone for winter break. So I'll move us on to the next report, which is LCCEF and Frankie Kokenor.
Good evening, everybody. Today's meeting went by fairly fast. At least it felt like that today. So I just want to introduce myself. My name is Frankie Kokenor, the president of LCCEF, and my pronouns are she and her. This year, our union has worked with LCCEA, the administration, and the Board of Education to ensure that we have a safe campus. Even though at times we can feel like it's a real struggle and a stress point, our union is appreciative that we have a campus that has taken measures to be safe. With the news that's been coming in from across the world and the country, with the very fast spreading Omicron variant, our safety measures will be tested this winter. And I'm hoping that the next time we see each other, we'll be able to see our campus remaining safe and healthy. I'd like to thank the board and the administration for listening to me last month by implementing our raise on our next paycheck right before Christmas and catching us up on the back pay at the beginning of next year. This means so much to the classified employees at Lane. This year, the president of our college, Marge Hamilton, surprised our members with a week off between Christmas and New Year's. I would like to say thank you to Marge and everyone else that worked with her to give us this gift of time to rest at the end of the year. It was needed for everyone, and that I've spoken with several people that are so grateful to have this time with their families. I wish all of you the best for the holidays that you celebrate, and maybe the ones that you don't celebrate. And I'm hoping that you all have a safe and happy new year. Thank you.
Thank you, Frankie. Up next, we have a report from Lccea President Adrian Mitchell.
Good evening, members of the Board of Education. I will report briefly this evening on some highlights from our faculty professional development program, a few items from our all faculty survey, and a brief update on labor relations. I'd like to highlight the wonderful work of our faculty professional development coordinator, Erin Bartley, who has led the effort to apply for and receive a grant from the Oregon Education Association to continue the inclusive teaching event series for faculty. This winter, the focus will be on transparency in learning and teaching with a community of practice. That will be kicked off with a workshop by Dr. Mary Ann Winklemess, who is the director for the Center of Teaching and Learning at Brandeis University. In addition, the Faculty Professional Development Program is sponsoring a Democracy Conversation series that will continue in winter with a workshop entitled Confronting White Nationalism in Oregon, Tools and Strategies for Educators, as well as a follow-up talk on the psychology of extremism with a workshop for faculty to discuss the relevance of these two events in and outside the classroom. I'd like to share briefly some of our results from our most recent all-faculty survey that took place in the month of November with more than 245 participants. Faculty members are reporting heavy workloads and uncompensated work time. More than 3/4 of faculty report working more than their assigned and compensated time, with 1/3 working more than 20% uncompensated overloads. 97% of faculty report working some evenings or weekends, with 84% working evenings and weekends at least half of the weeks each term. We are also seeing increased necessity and basic needs that are unmet for faculty. 36% of our part-time faculty who are not retirees report having relied on government assistance while working at LCC as faculty. This is a substantial increase from our last survey in 2019. In addition, more than 10% of our part-time faculty have experienced food insecurity during the last year. 3% of contracted faculty have also experienced food insecurity during the last year, and one faculty member experienced houselessness during the past year. There are some impacts to this on faculty working and student learning conditions. On a very positive note, 97% of faculty note that they are strongly committed to serving students. 62% of full-time faculty and 55% of part-time faculty who are not retired report, however, that stress from their job affects their life outside of work. 41% of full-time faculty and 29% of part-time faculty have considered seeking a job elsewhere due to the working conditions at LCC. And about 20% of faculty report challenges with meeting their instructional needs to serve students, not having private office space, access to technology, or classrooms and instructional spaces that allow them to serve students well. These have impacted faculty morale and feeling of appreciation and or inclusion. 73% of full-time faculty feel valued by their faculty colleagues, while only 29.9% feel valued by administrators. and more than 2/3 of full-time faculty have low confidence in the administration's inclusion of faculty in decision-making that values stakeholder input. I think this is most recently evidenced by the strategic plan, which was not approved by College Council and received feedback from College Council only in November of this year. Regarding labor relations, I'm very happy to report that we've reached an agreement regarding the impacts and funding provided by SB 551. This will help ensure that part-time faculty do not suddenly lose insurance from one term to the next. This will provide better options for part-time faculty who have family members insured, additional compensated time for contracted and part-time faculty, restoring at least one day to the work year. It will include a new curriculum development fund focused on social justice, equity, and diversity. And establish, this is probably our most exciting part, establish a social justice, equity, and diversity faculty fellowship to expand representation of historically excluded groups in the faculty, with a mentorship program for new BIPOC faculty through our faculty professional development program. We're looking forward to the ongoing collaboration with HR and especially appreciate the leadership of HR, including Shane Turner and Sharon Daniel. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Adrian. Okay, so moving on to information reports. Are there any questions that board members have about any of the information reports? Steve?
I just wanted to talk about the budget report a little bit.
Sure. We've got Zach here, so go ahead. What's your questions?
Well, I see that in the last handful of years, our revenues have fallen short of our expenses, and the projection that Zach provides shows that that gap is likely to widen in the coming years, but significantly, right? Just 2 or 3 years from now, the projection is as much as a $10 million spread. That is significant and it's sort of a top priority or top concern of mine. And I was just wondering what opportunities do, let me back up. If the board or members of the board were concerned about meeting the budget shortfalls with tuition increases, Zach, what other options do we have as a board to meet our obligations without significant tuition increases?
President Hamilton, you unmuted. Did you want to jump in before I did?
Actually, I will though. The last slide is the levers. There's always something else that you can do. That's the way we like to think of it. And of course, you've got tuition for inflation. But for example, these are things we'll be talking about with you in January. First of all, Rosie brought up marketing. You got to bring more people in. They are your revenue source. So I think, doing more in the marketing and recruiting and retention is a must. And that's always, we're in crisis mode, I would like to say right now. Banding tuition, we talked about it about 2 years ago with the international students. It was successful. We're going to bring that to you because we really believe that will help students take more credits. Austin, I believe that they did some creative things down in Klamath that were successful. And I think, we have pretty much good evidence that we can do that. We are looking at some entrepreneurial ideas that we can bring to this group. And then, of course, there's all the different operational efficiencies that we have to continue looking at, our staffing patterns, our materials and services. I will say this, though, and you dealt with this a little bit earlier, supplies, contracts, anything that we work with related to capital technology are skyrocketing the costs, and we have to plan for that now. So it's going to be a challenging discussion. Everything is solvable, but we are going to have to be revisiting levers that we did not think we'd have to revisit in a while.
Zach, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I was just going to say a caveat on this slide that I wanted to mention because I missed the note on it is that when I put these together, I excluded the HERF money from 21 and 22. So I wanted to portray where we would have been had we not had that. And that was an oversight on my part to not put that note here. Now, I will say, though, with the current expiration dates of those funds, if we do not request an extension, they will not be available for the entirety of next fiscal year. So I just wanted to call that out because that was an oversight on my part when I was putting this together.
And can you clarify, will we be requesting an extension?
So we've had preliminary discussions at last week to explore it. The issue that we have, that's the challenge that's facing us, is with the institutional portion, because we've earmarked $3 million for this year of lost revenue, and there's only 5.8 in its entirety left. So once we take that off, we have 2.8 left. Earlier this evening, we talked about an increase to the ventilation work. We know that we're going to be testing employees and students for COVID testing. So those are expenses that we're tracking too. So this really is a question of projecting where we land this year and how much of it do we want to apply lost revenue now. As we evaluate next year, we can request the extension if we want to set some aside, but it's a little fuzzy right now for me on how exactly that will play out. The second item I put here was the strengthening institutions portion, and that has a different set of guidance on how you can spend it. That doesn't expire until August, which still is only 1 month into the year. So we are exploring both, but I can't pinpoint at this time how much will be left of either.
Okay, thank you, Zach. I have Austin in the queue, followed by Rosie.
I'm sure we'll be discussing this a little bit further, but is it my understanding that when we look at like property tax revenues, we look at it from the projections or the data from the previous year, not necessarily if evaluations went up on various properties and stuff like that. Is that the correct? Like when we're looking at projections for.
Yeah, this is a great question, and it's overly complicated. So
I can wait till later for that.
No, I can give you a primer, and we can get into the details in January. But this year's budget, we projected 0% increase in property taxes because of the pandemic and the impact of the fires. It turns out that the data that we got from our district and the counties, our property taxes were up, I believe, over 3.6% in assessed values from the year before. We don't collect every one of those dollars. I think our history is about 98% of what we collect on that. So great collection rate. The issue is how that property tax number fits into the community college support fund. Because when they calculate our distribution, they make an assumption on property tax growth for us as well as the other 16 community colleges. If we exceed what the model assumes, it reduces it and everybody else kind of plays in with the assumptions. Our state funding allocation can go down. So in January, I'm hoping that the Higher Education Coordinating Commission will update the Community College Support Fund with the tax data so we can see those ebbs and flows.
Because essentially the funds go to the state and the state then allocates it. Gotcha.
Rosie?
Thank you. We have a retreat coming up next month, and I am really grateful to Steve for asking to talk about this a little more. I am convinced that we need to look at the last 2 years as an aberration. Those funds are not going to continue to be there on an ongoing basis. Our enrollment is down, painfully down. And I am interested as a board member in learning how we intend to balance the budget going forward. I'm really concerned about it. And I hope we will devote a considerable amount of time to this topic at our retreat when we can engage in some dialogue with each other about our perspectives on how to ensure the sustainability of Lane Community College.
Rosie, yes, and we do have a plan for that. Any other questions or comments on this topic or on the other information reports? Steve?
Yeah, Zach, can you just comment on these 60 active position searches? You list that as a budget challenge. What did you mean by that exactly?
Yeah, so we have 60 active searches. So I've built those positions that will impact our general fund and our Fund 9. So we talk about other operating funds into the projection. So part of that is if we fill every one of those as intended, we will see kind of more of the cost numbers around what's on the second slide. That's really was my intention with that.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or on any of the informational reports or this topic?
Well, so then the follow-up to that is, to what extent are we obligated to fulfill those 60 active positions?
This is a great question, and I'm going to defer to our provost or our chief human resource officer for that.
So I see Paul. Turn to screen on Paul.
Yeah, thank you, Steve and Zach. So it's interesting, the positions that we have in our Lccea contract an obligation to have a certain number of full-time faculty based upon our overall faculty workload. I think Zach might know this number, but I know at a little more than a third of those positions at least are full-time faculty that are necessary to hire to be able to meet that particular obligation. This is based upon a number of issues and retirements and separations and previous MOAs that we've had with the Faculty Association. So from the standpoint of an obligation for those faculty positions, we're obligated, right? We're contractually bound to those positions. The others are positions that have been approved and are in various stages of recruitment. Either of some of them might be new to serve a particular need that has been identified. Some of them might be replacement positions, again, that we feel that we need to be able to meet the mission of the college and to be able to continue to gain enrollments and serve our students. So though the rest of the balance of them outside of the full-time faculty positions, we're not contractually obligated for those, but those would be centered around, a judgment that they're needed to be able to sustain a particular operation at the college.
And I should mention that some of those 60 searches that are there are grant funded. So not all of them, I misstated that earlier. So some will be funded from grants. I want to mention that.
Thank you for that clarification. Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you. That was very informative. All right, I'm going to move us on to our closing items. We have board reports, and I believe Mike Eister had a report for us this evening.
Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, I represent the board on the Lane Economic Committee. It's an LCOG committee that talks about economic development sort of countywide, and there's a lot of rural focus on that committee. I wanted to let you know that Lane Workforce Partnership presented a proposal, asked for our support, and we gave the support for a grant request that they are planning to submit that is intended to provide more educational opportunities to support the strategic work areas that the county has identified for the county. If it comes through, there could be $15 to $20 million worth of effort spent on training. Certainly not all of that would come to LCC, but I was assured that Grant has participated with the group that is with Lane Workforce Partnership, who submitted this request, and that a part of that would come to LCC and would be used to fund training for people to expand workforce development here in Lane County. Just want to let you know that that occurred at our meeting last Monday.
Great, thank you for that update. Are there any other board reports? Austin, did you want to say anything for the OCCA board report?
Yeah, the report is in the document there, and I was trying to see if there was anything I wanted to point out specifically, but yeah. Yeah, OCCA Digest, that has some great information of priorities, what's coming up, and collaboration with ACCT. So yeah.
Thank you. Hey, are there any ad hoc committee reports? We had a report from the presidential search at our work session, and that is continuing to move forward, and will begin to really come to fruition in January. So more on that to come. Anyone else? Okay, so, oh, Steve, yeah.
Not a report, but at some point I just have a question to ask.
Sure. Go for it.
Just really following up on Rosie's comment about, adding the budget discussion to the January retreat. What is the process by which, board members recommend items for discussion at the retreat?
So we are coming to that next, and we have a closing item on the agenda where it's future meeting dates and agenda items, and board members are always welcome to make suggestions there. Like you could have brought up the calendar suggestion here as well for putting on a future agenda item, but that was a great way to have that conversation. And you can always communicate with the chair or the vice chair about ideas. Those are two ways. We typically meet on the Thursday after each meeting with the president to collaborate on the agenda. And we're not meeting tomorrow because Marge is going to the East Coast. We'll be meeting next week to work on the agenda. So always welcome to hear ideas from board members. So is it okay if I move on to that next section? Great. Okay, so future meeting dates. We just want to remind everybody that starting in January, we're going to make that flip with the calendar, and we'll be having, somebody correct me if I get this wrong, we'll be having board meetings on the first Wednesday of the month and work sessions on the third Wednesday of the month. January is a little different because we have a retreat. And so we have a retreat on January 22nd. And prior to that, we have a regular board meeting on January 12th. We do have the board retreat agenda here in the packet. We left it at 3 simple items. And one of them is a presentation from NASA. It's kind of more like a PD focus. A lot of time going to the budget. So short budget training. And then a lot of time to do some of the things that have been discussed tonight, to dive deep to prepare us for the budget season. And then we also had planned previously to, at our last kind of extra fall retreat, to look at the board goals, which we still have not done for this year. So building in a lot of time to really focus on the budget and also on our board goals, which we typically do in the summer, but which we haven't done yet. Austin?
for future agenda item or discussion is, and Rosie actually has been a great advocate for this, which is the bond in 2023. I think I have that right. Yeah, I think we should start having conversations about that, about how the board wants to approach this, and just general information to us new board members about the bond.
Great, thank you very much, Austin. We actually will have more of kind of like a perspective within the budget conversation about what is the financial impact of that bond. And then we have that on the February work session to have a report brought to us from the bond committee to talk about what we might need to do. Mike?
Yeah, I'm a little confused about the January board meeting. The first Wednesday in January is the 5th. And I have another regularly scheduled board meeting on the second Wednesday of every month, which I do in January as well.
Yeah, so the last several years, we've not met the first week and we've met the second week. And this is the calendar that we approved at our summer, I think our summer retreat.
Okay, well, I'll talk with you later about that.
Okay, okay, sorry about that. Anything else?
Lisa, could you remind us what is NASA? What is this first presentation?
Sorry about that. It's the Native American Student Association. And I remembered one last thing. So I was wondering what the preference of the board was versus morning start time or maybe an afternoon start time. We've kind of tried to move that around so that to kind of honor different preferences. I believe the last time we started later in the day. And so if we were kind of bouncing back and forth, this would be more of a morning start. So I just wanted to see if there were any strong preferences and or objections, I guess, to having a morning start. Angela?
I have a slight preference for a later start. I try to do longer runs in the morning on weekends, but I can adjust my schedule if that doesn't work.
Okay. Austin?
I'm supportive of later because, days are getting shorter. And so we do most of our meeting at night.
So is later like a 1 o'clock start or is later like a 10 o'clock start?
1 o'clock.
Okay.
But I'm open.
So we'll probably be meeting for at least 4 hours. So 1 o'clock would be having us go pretty late in the day.
And are we doing this face-to-face?
I don't believe we are. I mean, if we do it face-to-face, there's still masking requirements. I don't believe the governor's masking requirements go away. I've heard February is when it sunsets. Okay, so Mike.
Well, for what it's worth, the sub-board, which I chair, has been meeting face-to-face for the last 2 or 3 months. We do wear masks and we distance, and it's sort of a hybrid meeting where public and staff participate virtually, but the board members are present. Now, it's a little bit smaller board. It's only 5 people, so it's a little bit easier to do the distancing, but there's some value in having the face-to-face.
I agree. I had really hoped we would be to a place by January. Marge and Donna have been working on a plan for this. And so if the board would like, I can discuss this more with Marge and perhaps see what we could put into place see if it's possible to put into place for January 22nd. That is at the end of the month. Rosie?
So I know you all know by now that a masking requirement in a face-to-face meeting would be a real handicap for someone who is hearing impaired. I lip read almost universally. And that sort of makes me wonder, we have a requirement for employees and students to be vaccinated. Do we have that same expectation of ourselves? And if we do, and we're vaccinated and even boosted, why couldn't we meet face to face like our students would meet in a classroom, socially distanced without masks? If we expect our employees and our students to be vaccinated in order to be able to participate on campus, don't we have an expectation of ourselves?
Right, and I won't ask that question of the board in public, but I mean, whether or not people are vaccinated, but we do have a masking requirement for all of our staff and students on campus as well. So the conversation would have to be around, you know, what the board feels comfortable with, and also whether or not we wouldn't be following our own requirements for the college that we have set. Mike?
Yes, I appreciate the point that you raised, Rosie, and we can't have a meeting where our faces are covered. You know, that just doesn't work. And on the other hand, some of us live with immunocompromised people where I may be protected from dying of COVID, but I could still bring it home. So I think that means we're meeting virtually. I don't see a way around that.
So we are working, Marge and Donna have a little task force. They are working on trying to figure out how we can do this and have some ideas on kind of a transition process. And I do think it would be great to meet in person. And so we will keep trying to figure that out. Okay. Mike, did you have another thought?
Sorry.
That's
No.
okay. All right. Well, I'm not seeing any other hands, so I am going to go ahead and adjourn our meeting. Thank you all very much. This LCC board meeting is adjourned. Have a good